Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hybrid Athlete Dad podcast. In today's episode, I want to be talking about training for a triathlon as a dad. I'm going to talk to you about why I decided to do it, what my training plan looked like, and really how the race went overall. But before I dive into today's episode, I just want to give some kudos to this gentleman that I had met at the gym about a week ago. I hadn't seen him at the gym in quite a while, but I had seen him every so often in the gym. But usually, I like to keep to myself in the gym. I don't talk to anyone else. Sometimes I may have to ask for a spotter. Sometimes if I'm walking by someone, I'll say, "Hey, how's it going?" Just simple, small talk. But for the most part, I like to keep to myself in the gym. I hadn't talked to this gentleman before, but I finished my workout and I was going into the locker room to pack my bag and just head out for the gym, finish my workout for the day. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I haven't been in this gym in quite a while, and I just wanted to let you know I couldn't believe myself when I had seen you. I believe that it looks like that you've doubled in size since I've last seen you, and it had been a couple of months." And that was very good to hear because when you're putting in the work every day, when you have the diet dialed in, when you're doing the strength training, when you're doing the endurance training, when you're doing everything right, sometimes it's hard to look in the mirror and see a noticeable difference. So when someone came up to me and said that, and there was no need for him to say that, it was definitely very nice to hear. And I hope to reciprocate that on other people in the gym going forward. But again, wanted to start this episode and give kudos out there. And I think that's a big part of why I like the fitness community. For the most part, no one's there to put down other people. You can have someone that is just starting off their journey. Maybe they are overweight and they're in the gym, but good for them. They're trying to make better progress for themselves. And if someone's going to be in the gym and make fun of someone like that, there's really no time and place for that. Everyone in the gym is encouraging each other, we're uplifting each other. Really, the one reason that we're all there is to make ourselves better. No one is going to go to the gym and be like, "Oh, I hope I feel worse after this workout." So, again, want to give kudos to that gentleman. And now, diving into the episode, and to give you some context on the triathlon that I did, so we're not mistaken, I didn't do a half Ironman or an Ironman. What I had done for my triathlon is what you would consider a sprint triathlon. And what that is it was a half mile swim, it was a 12-mile bike ride, and it was a 3-mile run. Initially, I thought that I was going to want to do the Olympic triathlon. I didn't feel 100% comfortable doing what you consider a half Ironman, which would be, I believe it's a 1.2-mile swim, a 57-mile bike ride, I believe, about that, and then a half marathon, 13 miles on top of that. So I was initially thinking about doing half of that, which was going to be, at least through the Olympic that I was going to do, it was still going to be a 1.2-mile swim, some comparable what you're doing a half Ironman. But then the bike ride was about half of that. It was going to be 25-mile bike ride, and then it was going to be a 6-mile run instead of a 13-mile run that you would run in the half Ironman distances. And they called that one the Olympic, and then for the half Ironman they called it the long course for this particular triathlon that I was going to be running. So just to preface it, I did that sprint triathlon. My goal right now and what I'm really working towards is doing a half Ironman. I have my eyes set on doing the half Ironman in Springfield, Massachusetts in June of 2025. Now, when this episode goes live, it'll be September of 2024, so I have a very long runway to get there. But the reason I really got into these triathlons was honestly, I had been running for really not that long. I believe I picked up running in maybe late March. That's when I really started to dive into this hybrid athlete training, this lifestyle. I have been working on my nutrition since the start of the new year with my nutritionist. We started to incorporate some cardio, and that cardio was very simple. It was running 1 mile on the treadmill twice a week in the gym, which for me, that was definitely hard when I had just been walking for a very long time. I didn't think that I could really be a runner, but I decided, hey, these are what these hybrid athletes are training. I'm seeing these individuals that are out there and they are lifting heavy and they're running far. And that's what I want to, that's really what I want to be doing. So with that said, I just started running in the neighborhood near me. And to go around the neighborhood near me would be a mile and a half loop. And just doing that mile and a half loop, I would just be absolutely exhausted. I would be lying on the floor just panting like a dog on a hot summer day, and realized that this was really hard for me. And then in April, I'd been running a couple of times, and then I ended up having to get a procedure done, and that forced me out of running for about a week or two just to make sure everything healed up and the stitches were gone and everything was good to go. And then I got back into running and was doing running for basically the end of April through May. And I was like, I enjoy this. I'm starting to push myself and go further. I had maybe bumped it up to 3 miles every time I'd run 3 times a week, which for me, that was really outstanding. I had actually signed up for a 5K just to go off and see what it's like running in a race. But I thought to myself, how can I push myself further? I definitely do enjoy this running aspect and pushing myself while I'm running, but what more could I be doing that's really going to push myself out there? And that's where I came up with this idea of doing a triathlon. And my initial thought was I want to go and try to do an Olympic triathlon, which, again, for the audience out there, 1.2 mile swim, 25-mile bike ride, and 6 mile run at this particular event. And that's what I had my mindset on. That's what I had set that I was going to do. Now, when I had this idea that I was going to start doing this, it was at the end of May, and the triathlon was going to be starting in the end of June. So I'd honestly given myself about 5 weeks, 6 weeks worth of training to go out there. Now, at this point, I had built up my running to now I was running about 5 miles every single time. And if you've been listening to the podcast, I run 5 miles on Mondays right now, 6 miles on Wednesdays, and then this Saturday, I'm going to be running 10 miles and be consistent at that, and then maybe bump that up as we get further into September as I'm running a half marathon in October, and that's a new challenge within itself. But for today's episode, just focusing on the triathlon, I had the running down and I felt comfortable. I could run 6 miles. If I could run 5 miles, I could run 6 miles. That's not going to be a problem. The problem and the issues that I found in trying to train in such a short period of time was when it came to the biking, and specifically when it came to the swimming. I could bike 5 miles, and I know I would have to bike 25 miles, but my legs would be killing me. My legs would feel like they were just absolutely shot, and my pace was pretty terrible. I mean, I was biking like 6 miles a minute, which is pretty horrific when I think in my mind that people could be running faster than I'm biking. And I started to get this idea, okay, it might take me a little while longer than what I expect when it comes to this biking aspect of it. So let me try swimming. And when I was doing swimming, I was swimming in my pool that I have in our backyard, and I just started swimming laps. I remember just going down and back, which was 100 meters totally of a 25-meter gym. Might be a little under that, but just to make it easy, going to 25 meters. And it was just incredibly hard trying to swim that. And that's when I realized I only have 6 weeks to be able to swim a mile. And I knew in the back of my mind, I have a 1-year-old daughter, soon to be 1-year-old daughter at the time. If I'm going out there and doing the swim portion of this triathlon, I want to have the full confidence out there that I'm going to be able to do the entire swimming part of it and the entire swimming process and not have to worry about it. Might have some jitters, but I know that I can do the swimming. I ended up getting on a 6-week training plan for swimming. I forget exactly what it was called, but I went on Google, typed in how to swim a mile, and it was like a 6-week plan, and I followed that. But I still noticed the biking needed some work, and I didn't want to push myself so hard where I knew that I was going to put myself in risk, where if I'm going to be swimming over a mile, I don't have that full confidence. Yes, I could drop out and become a DNF, but that's not necessarily what I want. I want to make sure that I can complete this race. So with that said, I realized that I couldn't swim that 1.2 miles at that point in time. Now I feel more comfortable being able to do it. And I realized I maybe needed a little bit more than 5 weeks to swim and train on the bike, or I knew how to swim. I knew how to go on the bike. But when it came to competitively, I hadn't done that ever. nor had swam in quite a long time. Same with riding a bike. And that's why I ended up going with that sprint triathlon, which again was a half-mile swim. It was a 12-mile bike ride and a 3-mile run. And similar to when I was running the 5K, I know I can run farther than 3 miles. I ended up running two 5Ks before I ran this triathlon to really get race experience, see what it felt like, get those race day jitters, and just have a good idea of how to mentally prep myself for a race day before I go off and do this triathlon. I knew that I could do it, but I was there more learning about the experience. My goal wasn't to finish first. My goal was to use it as a learning experience and to springboard my training going further. What I really found about the triathlon was the mental benefits that I got out of pushing myself. It was very uncomfortable biking. It was very uncomfortable swimming when I'm having a very hard time swimming and I'm just like trying to catch my breath. And even my wife would comment on how heavy my breathing was out in the pool. It was very uncomfortable. Same thing with biking. And I could picture on the loop that I would go out on the road and that I would start biking. I would know that there's two giant hills that I have to get through. And it would just be hard mentally going into the biking knowing I have to go over these two giant hills. And if I go in a different direction, I'm going to have an even bigger hill that I'm going to have to climb. So it really made me just push myself mentally and to push myself doing something that's wildly uncomfortable, especially like I mentioned, the swimming aspect of it, the biking aspect of it, and doing something that's totally unnew. And I had no idea, okay, like what does the transition look like from the water to the bike to the running? How do I get set up? What nutrition do I need? All these things that I had no idea about, and that's why I use this smaller triathlon as more of a learning experience where I thought about doing an Ironman this year, at least just doing a half Ironman this year in Jones Beach in New York in September. I believe it's September. And I just thought to myself, I'd rather just use this as a learning experience and make sure I feel ready and comfortable. I don't know if you'll ever feel 100% doing a big event like that, but I want to know, okay, I can swim the 1.2 miles, I can at least bike 50 miles, and I can do 13-mile run. And that's part of the process I'm doing this year of doing the half marathon in October, making sure I can do that aspect of it. And then along with the swimming and the biking where I'm not competing in that, but it just allowed me to have that confidence going in because it still is a new sport to me and it's still something that I'm learning to do. Now, when it came to the workout plans that I didn't have anyone to help me out. I just made these plans up on my own. Was that the most beneficial? No, it probably wasn't. But did it work for me? Yes, it did. And I really just looked, I was like, I have to do a half-mile swim, I have to do a 12-mile bike ride, and I have to do a 3-mile run. I got the running portion down, but I'm going to continue to run throughout the week. Now, when it came to swimming and biking, I was swimming and biking on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, doing each of those exercises. And then as we started to get a little bit closer to the race, I still didn't feel 100% comfortable in my swimming abilities. So what I ended up doing was adding an extra day on Sundays, where every Sunday I would swim in the pool as well and push myself that way. And I found that giving myself that extra day just gave me that extra confidence. But really what I did for a training plan, and again, maybe it's not the best, but at least worked for me on the sprint triathlon, was I would do the running 3 days a week where I knew I could run at least 3 miles. And then I would swim according to the swim plan, and it worked up to 1 mile. I figured if I could swim 1 mile, I could swim half a mile. And then when it came to biking, I would just go out and try to bike 10 miles every single time that I would do that. And that was really my plan. Before I even did the triathlon, I didn't put any of them together. I didn't swim, bike, run on any specific day. That probably wasn't my best strategy. I had no idea what it felt like to bike after wearing a wetsuit, because usually I would have to split my workouts up where I would drop our daughter off at daycare, I would go swim in the pool, and then about 4:30 I would go on the bike ride and split it up that way and try to just maximize the time to be as efficient as possible. So when I was doing this triathlon, I had never put all three of these performances together. I hadn't done the swim, bike, run at any point in time together, but I knew if I could do each of them individually, then that's going to give me that mental confidence that I could go out there and I can complete this. When it came to training for this triathlon, I wanted to make sure that even though I'm training 7 days a week, I'm still spending time with my daughter. And that's like what I just mentioned, where I was still strength training 5 days a week and I was still running the 3 days a week. Now I'm adding in almost like two extra sessions on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, where now it's like having 3 sessions. So we'll drop her off at daycare, have an hour before I start work. That's when I'm doing my swimming. Now, right about as she's getting home or a little bit before home, that's when I'm just going to have to go off and do the biking. Do I miss her when she gets home and I'm out there on the bike? Of course I do. But I realize if I want to get this training in and train for this triathlon, it's going to be hard to make sure everything is going correctly. There's going to have to be some sacrifices made here and there. And those are some of the sacrifices that I made. And I really just had to overcome that guilt and manage those expectations and just really plan my schedule to work around what was going on with my daughter when she was having daycare, if she was being sent home, and just maximize my time the absolute best that I could, knowing that I don't want to be training too much when she's home, but sometimes there might be a day where I'm going on a 15-mile bike ride and I'm just gone for I'm gone for an extra 30 minutes, or maybe I'm doing an extra session, or not so much doing an extra session, but swimming longer in the pool, and that's taking time away from her, especially on Sundays, but knowing that I'll make up for it somewhere else, but not that I want to do that necessarily all the time. So it's trying to juggle this balance of training for this triathlon and then also managing my time as a father and trying to find that balance in between. But I definitely felt that guilt early on, and I just really had to rework my schedule and push myself to work out at times either there before our daughter gets home or just as she's getting home, and really work to manage those expectations as a dad, because I don't want to be training so much that I never get to see her, but I also want to be training so little that I show up to the race just wildly unprepared. Now we're looking at race day and super excited for it. So this is my first triathlon at the end of June that I was running, the sprint triathlon. And initially, to give you some context, I thought to myself, I'm going to be wearing a wetsuit while I'm doing this triathlon. So the idiot in me was wearing the wetsuit in our backyard pool every single time I would be out there training. Come race day, the water temperature is too warm. What that means is the water temperature, I believe, was like 82, 83 degrees, which made wearing a wetsuit illegal. So that was the first mistake I made, was only training in the wetsuit, because I was like, in my mind, I'm going to train in this wetsuit because that's what I'm going to be wearing. I want to make sure I feel comfortable in it, know all the nuances of it. So that was the first problem that I had encountered, was only training in this wetsuit. Now what I do is I'll only train in, I believe they're called swim jammers. They're basically like spandex, but for the pool, unless there's a specific day where I want to wear my wetsuit in our pool. To give you an example, it was 60 degrees and sideways raining the other day, but I wanted to get my pool session in. I hopped in the pool in my swim jammers, and it was just absolutely freezing. I'm like, I'm shivering. This isn't going to be good. I'm going to go get my wetsuit. So I put that on and did that. And then what I started doing was just training on Tuesday nights throughout the week, or Tuesday nights during the week, I should say, not throughout the week, is that there's a triathlon club near me, and they have an open water swim. And the first time I did that, I swam with no wetsuit on. The second time I swam with the wetsuit on. I'll probably swim with the wetsuit on just because I feel more comfortable in it. I have better speed in it. But when I'm not wearing that wetsuit, I'm just going to be swimming in these swim jammers and just make it as simple as that. So that was really the first mistake I made. And during that race, I found that because I'd only practiced in this wetsuit, that my lats were absolutely killing me and just made it very hard to swim. And really, what the hardest part of swimming was, and something I hadn't practiced because I had done zero open water swimming before doing this triathlon, was sighting. And basically, what sighting is I'm trying to figure out where the buoy is that I'm going to be swimming around. Well, when I hadn't practiced that before, I would start swimming straight, but I'd actually be swimming off to the right. If I had to swim to the left, I'd be swimming to the right. If I had to swim to the right, I'd be swimming to the left. And it just made it significantly harder where I'm looking, I'm 50 meters to the right of where I need to be. Now I have to swim all the way back, and I'm just wasting this time. So that's something I've been working on, doing this open water swim on Tuesdays. It's still difficult, and I still swim, away sometimes, and I have to look up and see where I'm going in something that I'm just working on. I got so turned around on this open water swim about 2 weeks ago. It was calm for the first, and this is a half-mile swim. I believe they told me it was 800 yards. The first 600 yards was fine. The last 200 yards, the water was super choppy. It was windy. The wind picked up. And I don't even know how it happened, but I ended up swimming. It's almost like I went backwards and started swimming away from the buoy. And that's not what you want to have when you're in a race. So that was the first part, was the sighting aspect of it was definitely very difficult and something that I want to learn, and something I wouldn't have known if I had gone off and done a bigger race before doing the smaller race that's out there. Now, I finished the swim. That was definitely very hard, but I knew in my mind, if I finish this swim, I'm going to be able to finish this race. If I could go back in time, I would have done more open water swims just to make myself feel more comfortable. And there's just something different about swimming in the open water than when you're just swimming in a pool, even if it's an Olympic-sized pool. When you're out there and the water is just pitch dark, you can't see anything. And yeah, you have people around you, but it's eerily quiet being in the open water, going out there and swimming. And for me, it's like in the back of my mind, I know if I swim or if I run and I bike, I can stop. Now, if I swim and I can't go any further, that's not going to be good. That's going to be quite a disaster. But the reason I do this open water swim on Tuesdays is because they have 4 different lifeguards out there on the lake, and that just gives me that level of comfort knowing in case anything happened to go wrong, I got a cramp, whatever it may be, there's going to be these lifeguards that are out there. So I got through the swimming and just very relieved to get through that. Then I went off to do the biking. I didn't even have the clip-ons where you clip your shoes into the bike. I was just using my running sneakers at the time, and honestly, I still do when I'm training. That's probably something that I want to be upgrading, probably in the near term. But hop on the bike, and the initial descent, it's a little downhill, and then you go uphill, and it's a rolling hills course. So for the audience out there, you're basically going up and down hills, and what ended up happening was I bought a cheap road bike from Walmart just to test it out, make sure I liked the sport before I invested in anything else. It was like $250. And this happened to me a few days before, and I tightened the gear up. But what ended up happening was, the gears were 1 to 7. Obviously, 1's the easiest to pedal in, 7's the hardest to pedal in. So we're starting off on the sort of downhill. I put the gear in 7, and then the gear basically became dislodged per se, or the screw wasn't as tight. So now I tried to flip the gear down, and it wouldn't do it. It would just move the entire gear box or the entire gear system on the bike. So if I was going up a hill, I would have to stop, hold the gear, and then put down or put up to what I wanted to go to. And that just really killed my time. And so eventually I just put it in like gear setting 2 after I had stopped, which is fine. But when you're going downhill, I want to be in gear 7, so I'm still being able to pedal and push myself further. So now when I'm in gear 2, it's like you're spinning your tires so fast, which is fine for going uphill, which is what I needed in this rolling hills course. But so that was something that I learned, was make sure to test your bike out. Going along with that, I had a water bottle. I threw some electrolytes in it, but I didn't have a water, thinking that there would be a lot of aid stations. For this particular race, there was one aid station, I think during the entire race that I came across. So I ran the entire 2-hour race, I think, drinking one little Dixie cup worth of water. So I would probably plan that hydration a little bit better if I could go back to it. So I ended up getting done with the biking. It was hard. It took me longer than what I'd wanted. The hills were killing me, but I went out there and I got through it. Now I have the running portion aspect of it. And when I run these 5Ks, you get your bib and you get pins for your bib, and that's what I thought that's what we do in a triathlon, not realizing that the majority of people doing the running portion are using a race belt. That it's basically you put the bib on it and then you clip it on like a similar, like you would a belt, and then you run with that. Well, I didn't know to buy that, so basically I had one shirt that I had brought with me. I was like, how do I get my bib on me? Luckily I had pins in the car that I just kept in there, and I just wearing my t-shirt that I was going to wear after the race that I wasn't supposed to wear during the race, and that's ended up what I put on the race bib. So I would have got a race belt. That way it would have just been so much easier instead of me throwing on the shirt with all these pins. Just really just not the smartest look that I recommend. But overall, the race definitely took a little longer than I would have liked. Looking back, if I could have swam a little bit straighter, if my bike just would have worked like it had been for the majority of training, and then for the racing part, I think that was fine. I wish I would have pushed myself a little bit further. I think I had a little too much left in the tank at the end there, but overall, it was a good experience, and that's what I liked about doing the smaller triathlon in the beginning, because I could use that as a stepping stone for these bigger triathlons that are out there. And really what I would encourage other dads is to do some sort of challenge to push yourself, whether that's going out there and doing a 5K or a 10K, a half marathon. Even at some point for myself, I'm looking to do a 50K or a 100 miler, I believe it's like the Cocodona 250. You're talking very long races, but I know it has to start small, or you're going out there and doing a triathlon like I did, or you're going out there and actually doing an Ironman, whatever it may be. I encourage you to go out there and to push yourself and to challenge yourself, because at the end of the day, it's really going to be worth it. And then for me personally, why I like to push myself is to tell my daughter someday, hey, here's what your dad did. I went out and I ran marathons and Ironmans and these really hard and intense races, and they were very difficult. They were mentally straining, but I completed them. And that's the inspiration and the hope that I want to give her by doing these races and by continually pushing myself. But I really hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Hybrid Athlete Dad podcast and what it looked like for me training for a triathlon as a dad, and what the race day experience was like. And if you like this show, I'd really enjoy it if you could leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and share any feedback that you have for the show. Thanks, everyone.